Because a lot of these are questions. This is
We're
all
live,
advice,
boy.
though. Sweet. Awesome.
Hey, thanks for tuning in, viewers at home. This is Totally Deep, Cripple Creek Backcountry's Backcountry Skiing Podcast. I'm Doug Stenclik. I'm here with Mike Polito, and we're doing one of our very few live streams just for Grand Traverse Stoke, which Mike and I got the bug bad this weekend because there's nothing like getting your ass kicked in a smaller schemo race to get psyched for the Grand Traverse. And we're both coming off, one day of recovery.
Yeah.
And now there's nothing but Stoke and skating ahead.
Another month of training.
Yeah, plenty
More.
of time.
Yeah.
So if you're starting training now, it's not too late. We'll have some tips at the end. But yeah, we were asked by the CB Nordic Center. I would first plug, this is sponsored by Montaigne, Dynafit, and of course Cripple Creek Backcountry. The Elk Mountain Grand Traverse, I wish I had the year. I know it's 2023, but it's probably Nick, are you fact checking?
It's the 25th, I believe.
I think it's the 25th.
I think Ted Mann just wrote an article about it.
Yeah, we're a quarter century into this awesome race.
Yeah.
And yeah, they asked us to come on and talk about gear because it turns out everybody has the same 10 questions that get asked over and over and over again. So we're hoping we can clear some of that out. First thing we'll do is we'll cover, gear check questions, which is probably the most stressful part about the whole race. Once you make it through gear check, then you're pretty much all downhill in Aspen. So we'll start with that, and then we'll move to, kind of training tips for what you can actually get done in the last month, maybe mental training being the most important. And then finally, we'll have some race day tips. I'm Doug Stenclik. Like I said, I don't know, this might be my 10th year. I haven't made it every year. My biggest advice would be just do what Pat O'Neill does. And every year, he's doing the Grand Traverse. He knows around what weekend it's going to be. It's another year. It's another Traverse. You don't have to sit there waffling, is this going to be my year? Just commit now for next year. So if you find this video somewhere floating around the internet, you got over a year to train, and you can still get registered. Let's get into gear, because that's always the questions. I would say Nick, our producer behind the camera here, he has some links that he's going to insert in. We've covered the full gear list with Cam Smith, many-time Grand Traverse winner, Triple Crown winner. And yeah, he has some awesome tips, so you get to see it from his perspective. We shot 3 videos from him, so we're really only going to cover your questions. You can type them into the chat, and we'll try to get back to them. Some questions that people emailed in ahead of time, and the few things that have changed this year. So I'll start with the major things that have changed, which Becky Nation, our awesome Grand Traverse organizer and CB Nordic head of events. What's your title, Becky? She's going to be sending me some texts. But the few things that changed are the warm or emergency layers that we covered in previous posts, especially the pants. That has been a little bit up in the air previously. We used to say, Becky's calling in as the event director and race director. So, the pants could have been heavy fleece before. They cannot anymore. They have to be an actual insulated pant. The jacket's pretty straightforward. Everybody has a down jacket. Everybody has a puffer, which I actually just heard him called a puffer in the last year. So that's something that we all need, and we all have. But the pant is not something everyone has. Mike, you have any leftover from Denali?
Yeah, down. Personal preference, down versus synthetic is always going to be a personal preference, but I use down because I don't sweat too much in this race.
Yeah, and these are emergency layers.
Right.
What I will say about it, and one of the questions we'll get into is, how much do you need this gear? The down layers, the emergency layers, are not something you want to mess with, because I've actually DNF'd this race before, and it gets grim if you have to go out with an injury and emergency layers. So this is certainly not something you want to skimp on. So no more fleece. You're going to get turned away. Another good point that Becky made is if it's your first time racing, that's probably why you're watching the podcast right now, you should get to gear check on Friday. That might be my biggest tip. Actually, this was a tip I gave to you about taking days off around the race. What did I say?
take days off
Yeah,
around the race.
don't try to do it in one day.
Yeah.
So if you just are driving over, even, we're over here in Carbondale, Colorado, which is en route for all of you shuttle drivers that are coming from Crested Butte to Aspen. If we jetted over from Crested Butte Saturday morning, race Saturday night, and then finished in Aspen Sunday morning, that's a bad time.
Yeah.
So this is a once-in-a-lifetime race. Take a couple days off. Take a day off to recover. And hopefully, take all of Friday off and get into Crested Butte on Thursday night. There's always a lot of awesome events going on. And if it's your first time racing, do the gear check on Friday. It's way chiller. There's not so many people going through. And that way, when you find out you're hosed on the pants, you can go shopping around town or through one of the exhibitors like us there.
They will take a little bit more time. If it's your first Grand Traverse, I remember the first time I did it, they definitely not grill you, but they're definitely a little bit more in depth on what they're looking at to make sure that you're actually prepared for this. Now, if you've done a few of them before, they're going to kind of give you a little bit of leeway on some of the items just because you've obviously completed multiple of the races. But it's a good thing to make sure that you have the right gear when you show up to gear check.
Yeah,
like because they will look at every little piece. It's one of the only races where they actually do look at every little piece of gear that you bring.
Yes.
Yeah.
So one of the little things on there that has also changed is I used to print out like a Cal Topo overlay of the Grand Traverse route, and I would like packaging tape it the night before to make it all smooth and try to keep track of it till next year. That won't cut it anymore. It's got to actually be a map. Or it can be a map actually on your phone, but then it needs to be downloaded. You're obviously not streaming podcasts, and you're definitely not downloading maps when you're between Aspen and Crested Butte. You're not going to get any service. So you have to download it ahead of time. And then you have to carry a backup charging system for your phone in case that dies. What I really recommend is Andy Sovic lives in Crested Butte. He started Beacon Guides. You've probably seen Colorado Light Tours. He's got them all over the country. He did a Grand Traverse specific map, which is a big blow-up, waterproof map of the situation. And we'll be selling them for him the day of the race. Awesome souvenir, and then you don't have to worry about extra batteries and everything else. A few other things Becky wanted me to shout out is minimum 2 skins per team or per person, so 4 skins per team. 3 pairs of skins is highly recommended. I have talked about this before. A really thin pair for Richmond Ridge is an awesome thing to have. So, if you think about a race ski like this over here, 64 underfoot, usually we put the skins right to the edges with maybe a sliver of the base showing. But having a skin that's like 45 or 50 with a lot of edge showing is awesome. So that can be your third backup pair. Sometimes if it was like a team between Mike and I, we might carry just a 5th pair for the team.
Yeah.
But minimum 2 per person. She does put out the good point that if you did get wet, though, the synthetic will still keep you.
It is a good point.
You warm.
Oh, the creek crossings?
Yeah,
or in general.
I think we can get into course conditions in a bit, but I really do think that course conditions are going to be off the hook this year. I just got back from Gothic Mountain like 1 week ago, and I was over in CB, and it is nuclear there. It is awesome. There were parking lots there in the past that are now just 30-foot high snow piles. They've run out of places to put snow anywhere in Crested Butte. It's completely covered. So I just don't think we're going to have any problem with creek crossings this year.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always a little stressful. And I'm usually the guy that blows out the snow bridges when I like haphazardly skin over it. So just try to be in the top 10 or the bridge is getting wiped out. So Mike, what kind of supplementary questions do you have? And if you are watching at home, feel free, type some questions or comments into the comment box here, and we'll try to get to them.
So we've got a couple questions lined up. We're starting with gear, and this is a good one because this will if you do multiple of these races, this will change as you dial in your systems. How heavy are racers' packs on average?
That's a really good question. I would say 20 pounds on average.
Yeah.
If you think about it, it's 100 ounces of water, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So that's about 3 liters of water. Each liter of water weighs about 2.5 pounds. So you're looking at 7.5 pounds of water to start the race. One of the things I really like to recommend is not to try, if you have a race pack, not to try to get it into one little race pack. Usually a race pack will have basically like cloth chest straps and shoulder straps, and they'll dig in over a 10, 12, 14-hour effort, and you can start pinching nerves and then you can't pull. So something that actually has like a waistband that's going to sit and carry some load is super important. Like Mike said, if you look at, I guess Cam might not be there this year, but if you look at Logan or Simi or one of the top guys, they're going to be in almost nothing, and you're going to be amazed they can fit everything into such a small pack. Their night is way different than mine.
Definitely way different than mine.
And then, for people that are taking 15, 16 hours, that's when you're going to start pushing like 25, 26 pounds, and because everything has to scale appropriately.
Right.
If you're doing the race in 7 or 8 hours, you're just eating liquids and goo. If you're doing 12, 14 hours, you want to bring some real food. Then you might have to change your layers a little bit more. You're out there in the heat of the day. Like everything gets a little bit more serious. So I would say 20 pounds about average, maybe as much as 30. And, the leaders will definitely somehow get it down to 10. But that means everything you're buying is specifically for the Grand Traverse.
Right.
Like I have a Grand Traverse bin, and I almost don't open it every year until like a week before the race. That's why all this stuff is like retail version with tags on it, because I'm like, I can't disturb the Grand Traverse bin, because that like little multi-tool that fits all the norms, it just lives in the bin and only gets used for the Grand Traverse.
Yeah. Same goes as my repair kit.
Yeah.
What I use for guiding and backcountry skiing is way different than my Grand Traverse repair kit, which is, again, the list is the guide. We stick to the list.
We did start finally, after years of threatening to, pre-packaging Grand Traverse official Ziploc bags. We could probably do better in the Ziploc bag.
Thanks, Jim Howarth.
Yeah, but this is his idea. It has all of everything you need in there, so you won't get hassled at Gear Check. We just buy it all in bulk off Amazon and through the med kit suppliers and put it together. Same with the repair kit too, to have everything in there so you're not hunting around. You can get it on our website. We'll have it at the race, pre-race check-in.
Final tiny little bit on that regarding the pack and sticking to the list. If you think you may or may not need something and it's not on the list, I would try to not bring it, because everything on the list will be a pretty full pack. I mean, how often are you actually ski touring with a stove, for example?
Yeah.
Like the weight adds up on a lot of these things. So try to keep it as minimalistic as you can within reason. It looks like we do have a good question. Yeah.
We have Tanazi.
Nico's asking, do you have anything to insulate the water that you carry, and how do you carry water? And this is a great question, because it's a big first-timer issue regarding camelbacks, for example. And I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, there's a million ways to blow this race, and like 990,000 of them involve your water. And in general, what happens to most people is you carry a giant frozen block of 7.5 pound water on your back for 40 miles.
You're never able to drink it.
Yeah, so almost all of my advice for you, Nico, would be you have to customize something. A race top like this Dynafit one over here, keeping things in your pouches. So using soft flasks like this. Dynafit makes like an insulated bottle holder. We got, floating around somewhere behind me. Insulated bottles will help a little bit, but unless it's like in you, it's gonna freeze. So
it will freeze.
Yeah,
it will freeze.
If you are using a Camelback, which I don't think is a bad idea, a few tricks I've used before is I'll actually cut off the nozzle so that there's no valve. So if you're not blowing the water back, it's like pouring on you. And that's like a good reminder. And you can also, with gravity, just hold the nozzle up after you drink and it'll drain back into the reservoir. But what I've done before is getting one of those little like Camelback, like tiny packs that they have. And just like, it's just basically like a bladder sleeve. And I keep that right above my base layer under my main, pack. And that way that's up against your skin, and I'll run that hose through my like mid layer, through my speed suit top, and it'll just live nestled in here. But if you don't remember to blow it back, you're gonna freeze the hose.
Yeah.
But if it's not a totally frigid night, you can kind of like get the hose back underneath you and get it to thaw out. A lot of other people ask about water too. I would recommend not putting all of your eggs in one basket. So if you're going to use a bladder, don't use a 100-ounce bladder to be like, I nailed it. Because those are the people where it freezes. So think about maybe, 30 ounces or 40 ounces in the bladder, and then keeping a couple different bottles spread around yourself. So if one nozzle freezes.
Or if one of them breaks.
I
mean, if one of them breaks, then you're SOL as well. So.
The dumbest thing I ever did was I took a bike bottle and I like squeezed like 20 goos into one bike bottle. And put like boiling water in it and shook it up. So I'm like, this is brilliant. I got like 1,500 calories just in this one bottle. Coming down Crescent View Mountain, first descent, bottle flies out of the bottle holder. I had like 400 calories for like the rest of the night. So yeah, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
That was actually one of the questions we had earlier. So that takes care of that. Actually, a lot of these, if we're still on gear, I guess this kind of ties into nutrition systems. Personally, regarding water, I don't do much regular water. I actually wind up doing a lot of caloric and sugar in my water to get extra calories that way. But what are your preferred nutrition systems?
Yeah.
What are you eating over the night?
I have one of the grossest hacks you'll ever hear, but I'm going to throw it out there. You just get your, Vitamix or like your Magic Bullet, and you take a full can of chunky Campbell's chicken noodle soup into the Magic Bullet. You can blend that up into a fine paste and put it in a soft flask. It's got like all your sodium, your carbs, a little bit of protein right in that. Costs like $1.30. And that'll get you through a lot of the night. But that's for someone like me that I can't do just goos for the whole time. I need something salty. I know a ton of people pack pizza. I've tried pizza before. I've tried really buttery, like sweet potato cubes that are like really cooked that you can kind of just like pop in. So this is the one race I feel like Power 4, which we just had, you can get away with, just sugar the whole time. This is pretty much adding minimum of 2 hours to everyone's time. You don't want to still be eating sugar 6 hours into this one.
Yeah.
I also feel like your body's not meant to digest really anything, but especially pure sugar at 4 a.m. when you haven't slept yet.
Yeah.
So think about that. If you think it works for yourself, you might not know.
And solid food, like for example, I like Snickers as like part of my solid food that I eat during the race. I chop them up. Food's gonna freeze. B, solid food's hard to put down when you're exerting yourself for that amount of time. And so like the easier it is to eat, even if it's solid, the better.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think I was talking to my race partner Kelly the other night, and she was reiterating about 200 calories per hour. For high-end racers, maybe and then maybe 250 or 300 calories per hour for the recreationalist is like a good baseline. So if you kind of do your math on how long you think it's going to take you, and then kind of count your calories based on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you won't know a perfect system until you do the race once, at least.
Or I would say
Murphy's Law.
10 times. Yeah, you're looking at really 10 times before you have it. And, you talk to someone who's done it once, and they're like, oh, yeah, I know how I'm going to cut off an hour. And you're like, you know how to fix an hour of your mistakes from last year, but there'll be an hour of new mistakes you're going to make this year. So I guess one of the biggest gear questions that we get the most is on boot fitting and feet.
Yep.
My biggest advice right now, most of the race series are over, stop measuring your days in vertical. That is not helpful, and it's not helpful for your feet. So it's a way different pressure on your feet when you're walking uphill, up a 15% slope, blue level steepness all day. It works different part of the feet. It rubs different parts of the boots than when you're on really flat kick and glide skinning, which this race is almost entirely. You're going to have new blisters, new pressure points like you never knew. So get out, spend some time in your boots, get them professionally fitted for sure.
Tape your feet.
Pre-tape.
I would say, I don't know what you do, but I typically don't tape my feet on normal tours and normal training, and I do for the race 100%. Doesn't matter how long you've had training days. For some reason, your feet don't like this race.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would say really the one place to tape is, maybe when we look at some of this stuff here, like moleskin or something, like a 2-inch thick swath that goes across the heel. That's going to be where it gets you the most. But again, you want to try it before April 1st.
Yeah.
Or it's going to be a really bad night.
Yeah.
So yeah, get out on flat skins, flat long skins, spend some time in those boots, figure it out now. It's by far, after the gear check, I think feet are the second biggest challenge of this race.
Yeah, with a close third being partner dynamic, but
yeah,
possibly.
We'll get into that for sure too.
Do I really need race skis or any smaller ski, or can I just do this on my regular touring skis?
Yeah,
is a good question.
It's a very good question, and we get asked it literally all the time. I would say do not do it on your powder skis. We used to never even consider bringing, when we come to the race, we just kind of bring the last minute stuff so people can look at it, but we never bring race skis or bindings. But I think we could literally sell full race kits when they realize they brought a knife to a gunfight. Like I said, when you show up with your massive is relative, right? 95 for this race would be massive. And, we had a colleague, Mike O'Connor, on course last year that he could probably be like renting race skis for $1,000 a pair, like on coming up the Taylor Pass. So
yeah,
really the biggest thing is don't think of it as weight at all. It's just how narrow your ski is. It's more efficient. There's less drag. The wider your ski is, the more drag the skin has on the snow. So don't do it on a regular pair of skis. I really recommend, and I know the race directors do too, 85 kind of being the absolute widest that you should do it on. But a 78 is better, and 65 is even better because, yeah, the biggest issue that we have from expanding this race, which we hope to do, a few dozen teams every couple of years, would be making sure people can make the cutoffs, and the cutoffs get a little bit tighter every year. Mm-hmm. So if you really want to give yourself the best chance of success and the best night out, do it on race skis.
Agreed. Do they really check for leashes on top of Aspen Mountain?
Yes.
And the answer is yes.
They definitely do. They'll stop you. You'll have to go through your pack. My biggest piece of advice there is on all the race boots, there'll be a buckle somewhere on the boot. And if you girth hitch the leash to one of the buckles, the leash can just live kind of stuck up the bottom of your pant, out of the way, so you always know where it is. And then if you just have a little bit of a loop on your toe piece, they always have a hole in it. You can thread a tiny piece of P-cord through. Mm-hmm. So you have a place to detach that, smack it onto the actual ski, and you're off. So that's really what I recommend. But they won't check leashes if you're planning on finishing it
sub 9, right?
Yeah, before the mountain opens, but that's cutting it pretty close. And I've definitely coughed up spots once because I had to dig through my pack to find leashes, and people were passing us while you're shit showing up there. But I've also lost a ski on Aspen Mountain without a leash, and the ski was gone for years till someone heard the podcast and returned it,
God.
and I had to finish on one ski. So be careful about that.
And a clarifier too, if you have brakes on your bindings, then you don't need to worry about leashes. That's what that just popped into my head, because you don't need leashes obviously if you have brakes. So you need either one of those two. Obviously brakes are heavier, so if you have a brakeless binding, that's probably your best bet. So just if you don't have brakes on your binding, you need leashes. Go ahead.
Becky just wrote in a little bit of tips on what kind of aid are you really going to get out there. So there's really only 2 aid stations. There's one right at the friend's hut, and they are limiting it to 7 ounces of water, so significantly less than this can of beer. And that's really meant to just thaw out your, because it's like very hot water, so you can thaw out a bottle. You can pour it into something that's about to freeze. You can use it for your hose if you're rocking that system. So you're not going to get much help from them. There's an unofficial, what's the bonfire called again? I'm blanking on it.
Oh, and like the end of the East River?
No, over Star Pass. I'm forgetting his name.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Tio?
I don't remember it.
But anyways, there's a bonfire there, and he's sometimes giving out coffee, and that's awesome, but you don't want to count on coffee as part of your liquid. At the Barnard it rhymed. So at the bonfire, or at the Barnard Hut, they used to have an awesome feature that I wish they would bring back, or is it mandatory 10-minute stopover for like first aid check. They don't do it anymore, but you can still hang out there. There will be unlimited water there. I think sometimes they're nice enough to like hand you a cup of ramen and stuff, but it's a self-supported race is kind of where I'm going with that. So make sure that's dialed.
Yeah. We got a couple questions here, but we're going to get to those when we're done with the gear. For the emergency down pants, is there a cutoff length requirement? Some companies' puffy pants are only 3/4 length or shorts, or do they have to be full length? To best of my knowledge, they have to be full length, I thought. But
I think the 3/4 will fly if it breaks right above the boot.
Okay.
The shorts will not fly. The down skirt will not fly. I've tried that before.
Nice.
They didn't let it go.
Yeah.
So, brakes. Someone asked on the binding question, brakes will work. Any kind of ski retention stopper device will work. So,
bring both on the pants, by the way. Bring both to the gear check-in and see what they say.
Yeah.
And then you'll if they accept the 3/4 or something even shorter, then you're good to go. In terms of poles, are Nordic style poles that much better than my adjustable touring poles?
I would say if the conditions are firm, the Nordic poles are a massive advantage. I brought a pair out to look at it. The difference between a Nordic pole and a Skimo pole is slight. It's basically the powder basket, which is actually essential if we have any kind of soft snow. So I would rather have a normal touring pole, like your backcountry double, if it's a powder day, than a regular small basket Nordic pole.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we can see on the camera there. If it's a hard day, these have pointy tips that will help you skate and not skid off of it. This is in April, which it's always around the same weekend, but I can't remember it ever actually being April 1st to April 2nd. So we're really hoping that it's like a refreeze conditions. Powder and the Grand Traverse do not go well. We've pulled it off sometimes, but that's a good way to get turned around and sent back.
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily want powder. We want a good, solid isothermic freeze. And that's when a Nordic style pole or a Skimo specific pole makes a huge, huge difference. When it's one segment, you get a lot better energy transfer. You're not feeling it flex at that juncture anymore. And, that over 40 miles is a very big deal, especially when the worst miles come on Richmond Ridge at the end.
And the adjustable poles are heavier, too, by a considerable amount. And again, 40 miles, your arms are going to be a little bit more tired with
it's probably
a couple ounces.
The cheapest way. These cost between like 80 and $120. It's probably the cheapest way to save weight for the race.
I think that might be it for gear. Looking if there's anything else here. I mean, we have some recommendations from returning racers. Obviously we talked about the skins, volet straps. I don't. Are those on the gear list?
They're not on the gear list. Becky, put those on the gear list.
Yeah, volet straps are not on the gear list. This would be against what I just said. This would be one of the few things I do bring to volet straps. If you're not familiar, they're those long rubber straps that a lot of ski tours tie their skis together with. They work great for a lot of things, attaching a boot to the ski if you break a binding. What's really common, especially on racy boots with cord holding the boots together, or if you break a buckle, but if you rip the cord on that boot, volet straps are a great, quick way to just like cinch down and keep your walk mechanism engaged when you're skiing without having to repair the cord mid-race. So volet straps are definitely, pick your pleasure, but I bring them even though they're not on the gear list.
I would imagine you could do it with a bit of duct tape too.
Yeah.
But volet strap's way quicker to deploy.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's it for gear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, last thing I'd say with all of that weight in your backpack, it's probably not going to be as heavy, maybe similar, maybe a little bit different than your ski touring pack, but make sure it's comfortable for hours on end on your back.
The biggest question is shelters.
Oh, yeah.
And I brought out a few of them here.
Yeah.
My favorite one to recommend for a long time was the Megalite. We got a new one here that they changed the fabric. I don't know if you felt that. Mm-hmm. But it's like it's a more durable fabric, so I think it has made it quite a bit bigger and heavier. The one thing that's super nice about this is like, you took mine to Denali? I thought maybe you borrowed mine. Maybe you got your own.
We used the Mega Snow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Which is even thicker. Yeah.
But for any kind of snow camping, this is like the most useful thing that you could buy and use time after time. If you buy something like the Rab Super Light Shelter, this lives in the Grand Traverse bin and only gets taken out for Grand Traverses. So, pick your poison. $100, $300+. But
weight and size too.
Yeah. So, we do sell these. We're going to try to get more. We're down only having 4 left. What we want to see in this is it needs to have walls, so it can't just be a tarp. It actually has to have designated walls. And it either has to come with a pole or it has to be designed to use specifically with your ski poles. Right. So don't bring just an ultralight tarp. Has to be built to have walls.
Yeah.
Get this one. I think we have 4 left. We'll try to get more.
Yeah.
Grand Traverse bin.
Cool.
Yeah. And that sums out the gear. Unless anybody has any last minute questions, we're going to move on a little bit to what you could do for training. And I guess we got into it a little bit. The blessing and the curse of the Grand Traverse ski is that you are on skis and you're in ski boots. And even, 48 hours after the Power 4 for us, we're walking around fine, when if we would have ran 26 miles, like I would be crawling. Yeah. So you can kind of keep going, so it's not too late. The biggest deal would be getting out for a really long tour, or even better, blocking 2 days in a row. That there's still plenty of time to do that. If you could get one 40-mile weekend in, you'll have it for the race, even if you have to kind of break it up over 2 or even 3 days.
Yeah.
I've never done this, so this is do as I say, not as I do. It would be really cool to try a 2 a.m. start where you still get a bit of a night of sleep and you can do a tour with your partner, and that would be the best way to test partner dynamics before the race. So try an early morning start. Everyone's got time to wake up at 2 in the morning. Still plenty of time for that. You got any advice for training?
Again, I think you said this earlier, and whether it's before in the month leading up or the whole season, vert. It's nice to have that power and strength, but really it's long, easy days, and a lot of volume. If you measure in time, not vert. If you're able to put in even like 5-6 hours a week of just like easy skinning, you'll set yourself up pretty well for success there. And I would say, like, I think John Gaston actually told me one of the first or second year he won the Power Four, that was on a 10-hour a week training cycle. Now, like, not for everyone, but again, 10 hours, if you're able to put 10 hours a weekend, obviously it's a little late in the game to start doing that and to quote unquote ramp up. But that's a good way to really finish the race in under 12, 11 hours.
But it's still almost 5 weeks away.
So. Yeah, there's a lot of time. Yeah, I have a lot of ground I need to make up still.
And I guess the other biggest thing is if you can get out skating, you cannot diminish how important skating is on this. And I skipped all of my Nordic practices in high school, and I regret it literally every year on Richmond Ridge. We can get into that a little bit with the course preview, but if you can get out, a lot of times it's closer to where you live, get out skating, be comfortable being able to skate 10 miles. It's also nice because it works a lot of different muscles. It works your feet a little bit different. So there will be good chances to skate, so do that. I guess the last thing I'll say about training is mental preparation is really the most important thing out there. Mental preparation specifically being staying positive through it and staying positive with your partner. You can practice this. I got one quick plug. Download the Waking Up app by Sam Harris. It's got some awesome meditative stuff. And when all you have is your headlamp shining on your skis 2 feet in front of you, like you need some deep meditation to fall back on. And one of the biggest tricks that I've learned kind of over the years is always measure the night and everything you have done to prepare for that moment, not everything you haven't done. Did you go to everything you hadn't done in the Power Four at
all? Half and half, maybe.
Yeah. You start thinking like, man, why did I skip that weekend just to ride chairlifts when I should have got a 6 hour day in. So
this winter particularly was an hour slower than last year. So there was some thoughts in there for sure.
But everything in all the years and all the sports leading up to the Grand Traverse is awesome for building that base. So when it gets dark, try to think about everything you've done there.
Yeah. I mean the training is, again, we could go on and on into specifics. Everyone's going to have a different training regimen, but to pound it in, just a lot of volume at maybe zone 1, some zone 2, but other than that, you still have some time. 5 weeks before. 5 weeks. Quick late gear question: does the Camp Essential Light mat check out okay for the sleeping pad requirements?
It does. It does. And Becky just weighed in that if you're using an inflatable mat, which I actually almost insist you do because it's just so much smaller than the foldable Z mats, it will work, but then you need a repair kit. You need to have some patches and some glue to be able to repair it. So I actually don't go backpacking much. I don't know if I told you the story. So I don't really go backpacking, and we wanted to go climb Gannett Peak in the Wind River Range. And I was like, I don't think I have a sleeping mat anymore. I was like, no, in the Grand Traverse bin I do. And I went and I pulled out the Essential mat. I'm like, this is sick. It's like this big. And we went 2 days into the Wind River Range, and we got to like the glacier right up there with all the rocks. And my wife had this awesome, huge pad, and I pulled out the camp mat, and it took like 2 breaths. I was like, and the thing was like fully inflated. And I'm like, that's not good. And the thing is about that thick, and the most uncomfortable 3 nights I've ever had sleeping outside. So if you buy that one, keep in mind that probably lives only in the Grand Traverse bin, and that's why we don't open the Grand Traverse bin between races. So again, that would be very comparable to, do you plan on everything going super smoothly and getting done under 10 hours? You can start shaving grams for the pad. If not, one of the biggest things is, even if you just you twist your knee, you have to wait for rescue. That's where you're going to lose the most heat into the ground there. So that's why, a real pad at that point is probably more important.
Yeah. Well, we're done with training. We're still getting gear questions here, so we got to give the people what they want. Could you talk about skin waxing? Yeah, that's from Derek. That's a good question, Derek, because that's something that I think it's a very small percentage of people actually do as preparation for this race.
Yeah.
That might be like a top 20 teams thing that people do.
Yeah, and I brought a bar to remind myself to talk about it. This is just Pro Wax. It's the yellow, so it's one of the warmer. I recommend a warm wax. And it doesn't have to be Globstopper or a skin-specific wax. Any warm wax will do, because really what you're trying to do is make your skin hydrophobic, like you're trying to make the base hydrophobic.
Right.
I remember an old Power 4, maybe like 9 years ago at this point, before people were kind of hip to skin waxing, and it was dumping warm, wet snow while we were starting the race, and people were just glopping up everywhere, and you could just hear people trying to bang this, and people were switching skins out 20 minutes into the race because their skins were like unusable. And this can definitely happen again, we're talking April 2nd, the morning you're finishing, and if you're finishing it in 12 hours, it's noon. That sun's been up for 6 hours by the time you're coming on Richmond Ridge, and it's going to be warm and wet. So a warm weather wax is really important. The best trick for this is you can cran it in. You can even go against the grain of the skin and like get down, soften up a corner, get in a good thick layer, and then take a hot iron and pass it over pretty quickly. Not like you're waxing a ski. Don't hold it on the skin. You'll mess up the glue. You'll mess up the fur.
It melts in very quick.
Yeah. And just give it like 2 quick passes. And that'll actually cake it all the way in between the fibers. The skin is actually faster. So you'll feel more glide while you're going. And then if it gets warm, you're covered. It makes all the difference. So do that the night or 2 nights before, and then bring it with you. You could probably bring like a quarter of this bar, but keep that somewhere handy. That will save you from having a really bad day, and keep it in all of your packs for the rest of the year. It's worth it.
Yeah.
So buy 1 block of pearl, split it up 4 ways, keep it in all your packs. Good question, Derek.
Okay, so gear and training, race day tips, and I guess in race day tips we'll include also like course beta, I guess, or do you want to do that as like a separate category after that? Because we definitely have some very specific course beta questions.
Yeah, let's go to course day or course beta. I guess one thing is Dynafit as sponsors is offering to wax your skins the day of the race.
Nice.
Or the day of gear check. So
wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Sweet.
But do it before.
Yeah. So in terms of course beta, this is kind of, there are some random questions here. How do the winners finish in 6 hours? They know the course very, very well.
Yeah.
It's not just, it's a high level of fitness, but it's also, they know the course very well. So that kind of ties into that.
They're very strong people out there.
Yes. Yeah. What time do the majority of the people finish? I think 12 is about middle of the pack.
Yeah. I would say that.
12 hours.
Yeah, it's longer than you think.
Yeah.
So, and even the best intentioned 10-hour finishers, a lot of them are coming in at 12.
Yeah. And it slows down. There's like a weird bell curve if you look at the times, because the later it gets, the more handicapped you are as the sun is like beating down on you. You've had to bring more water. You've probably want to bring more food expecting to finish later. So it really, the times hit 12 hours and even slow down from there. Is it okay to stop, or do you really need to keep moving?
Yeah, by far the biggest thing is to just keep moving.
Yeah.
Slow down as much as you can, but momentum is a real thing. And once those skins stop, and with all like the nerdy stuff that we sell, one of my favorite pieces that I started bringing with is the Borax mitt by Dynafit.
I use that as well.
Yeah, and the reason why this thing is so cool is because it's an actual mitt. It is. You could look, and people are like, man, it's 45 degrees this year for the Traverse. It's going to be so warm. It is always going to be freezing above 12,000 feet on Star Pass at 3 in the morning. So you got to bring mittens. But this one is cool because you can still access, if you have a liner glove on, you can still use your poles. You can manipulate things there. But then it lives here, so you're not digging into your pack looking for it. And when you get to like start pass, you can kind of weasel it back on, and it's a mitten again. We have Dynafit wind shells that do the same thing where you can pull it over your backpack. Anything you can do to stop moving. My friend just told me on their Power 4 that their moving time was an hour slower or an hour faster than their total time. That's huge. And I didn't look, but I bet our moving time was like 4 minutes off. And, now if that same person goes and does the Grand Traverse, they could have 2 hours of stop time. And when you're on Richmond Ridge, you're going to be wishing to have that 2 hours back. So, yeah.
Practice eating while you're moving slowly. Would be on that note. That's where people are really on the water and food breaks. That time you think you're not taking a lot, but each one of those 2 or 3 minute breaks actually winds up being 5 minutes, and then that 5 minute break times 10 times 15, that adds up.
And like you said, it all compounds because you stop for 5 minutes, and then you're even colder. Then you're putting a jacket on. Then you're hot again. Then you're taking a jacket off.
Yeah.
Keep that slow burn.
Yeah. How hard is the skiing actually? There's it really varies. It does vary, but there's only two major descents and then like a smallish descent at the start of the race, pretty much. Well, so you have that, right? You have down Crested Butte into the East River. You have
that's a groomer.
Yep.
We say it every year, but take your time on that groomer. It is
lethal.
Yeah. Like even
blind rollers at night.
It's the same in Gothic. Like we go down that same groomer to get out the resort, and people will almost wreck in daylight. So if in the dark with hundreds of people around you, it's pretty serious. And there's just like no way tucking there to save 10 seconds is going to be worth it. Then you get to Star, and I've skied Star Pass in every kind of condition. The first year I did it, it was a full like ice refreeze condition with a big cornice, and I had like a shitty headlamp, and I'm looking into the abyss, and it was like a full vertical like side slip in, only for a little bit, but when you can't see what's down there, it's a little heady.
Yeah.
And then it mellows out pretty quickly. Last year was probably the hardest conditions I've ever skied in. It was just full breakable crust, and I usually don't crash when I'm ski racing, but I probably crashed 3 or 4 times. I think Simi and Ben on Nordic Gear, I could see their bomb holes everywhere.
Broke a pole up there, didn't they?
Yeah.
I think they might have, yeah.
So it's hard, but it's not long. It's probably only about 1,200 feet of descending.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and then
but it's also after this the probably the biggest climb, like going from Friend's Hut up to Star Pass is probably the steepest climb, where you're kind of like on the Stairmaster for X amount, 30, 40 minutes maybe, depending on how fast you're going. And so you've just like gassed your quads out, and then all of a sudden you have this moment of relief that you're going to Aspen, and then you're skiing down this thing. So I would just take a deep breath before you go down Star Pass. It's not. I wouldn't call it worse than a black diamond at a resort.
No.
But the conditions can really make that difficult, given it's in the middle of the night. And
you can make big traversy turns, and that's how a lot of people get down. And then it's a long descent, over 3,000 feet into the base of Aspen, but that is on a groomer the whole way. So steep blue groomer.
Yeah.
So not bad.
Yeah. How do you manage the creek crossings on years when they're open? So, as we said before, crossing our fingers, as long as the winter kind of stays as it is here, there probably are not going to be major issues with creek crossings this year. But, we have 5 weeks, so stranger things can happen.
It's been a really long time since we had full wet creek crossings for everyone, but the snow bridges do tend to break the later in the race you are. Usually, even if it gets warm a few weeks from now, some volunteers there that will go out with boards and shovel snow and try to strengthen those bridges.
The creek crossings that we're talking about are on the East River towards the beginning of the race.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've had to like mess with changing socks or anything, but I do know people have taken boots off and crossed and just, at that point, just cross, take care of your feet, dry them out, put the socks back on.
It's worth taking extra time to not get wet.
Yeah.
Like if you save a minute, or if you lose a minute or two trying to make sure that you're absolutely not going to get wet feet, that's better than the 10 minutes it takes to take your boots off, take your socks off, change your socks, etc., and then have cold feet.
Yeah.
For the rest of the race. Got a bunch of questions in here. Here we'll tie this in. Any tips for getting sleep the night or two before? How do you keep the anticipation in check?
Yeah, I would say you have to sleep Friday night. Saturday is out the window.
Right.
So those nights leading up to it are huge. I wouldn't recommend weed gummies, especially if you know too many people at the start. It gets a little stressful.
Yeah.
Not coming from any experience.
Yeah.
But maybe Tylenol PM. And basically, it's kind of a weird thing where everyone after the pre-race meeting kind of goes into like a hibernation, but nobody actually sleeps. It's just kind of being in a dark room and kicking your feet up for a few hours.
Sleep mask. That is pro move. That has helped me.
Yeah.
Not everyone can sleep on command. I can definitely. It takes me a while, but the sleep mask helps a lot. Like the thing that you sleep on over the face. Yeah. Because it's obviously going to be daylight out, and it's kind of hard to sleep midday, and your sleep schedule is going to be different. So, the marking on the course, it's not marked like a traditional skimo race. How would you kind of describe it?
Oh yeah.
There are not like those flags if you've done a lot of the races with the green, yellow, and red flags.
Again, you have a compass, you have a map. There's a reason. You might not need to reference it, but you got to kind of keep your directions. Even at Gothic, my Grand Traverse partner just started skiing downhill off the final descent and was heading straight the wrong way because it was a full whiteout. So, it's not marked every 20 feet by any means. They're pretty good about they have like big blinking strobes that light it, but the whole thing is you could in 1 year's condition be like, that was the best marked course I've ever seen. And then like last year when it was like dumping snow and super foggy, it can get pretty spaced out. So it's not a big deal. There'll be a track in. You'll be able to see where other people have gone, but you can't really afford to get disoriented. That's why they make you carry all the navigation stuff. It's not quite marked like, with green flags every 10 feet.
Yeah. Friend's Hut. This was I had not thought about this, and one of our experts who had put in some ideas in here. Friend's Hut is a hut, but it's not something that you are it's not a warming hut during the race.
None of them are.
None of the stops are. You are outside in the elements, no matter what it is. So are the volunteers, for that matter, which is really impressive.
In fact, you won't even notice that they're. Yeah, shout out to Donnie Duvall, my former Grand Traverse partner that won't race with me anymore, but he is always at the Friends Hut dishing out water, and all of CB Mountain Rescue. By the way, CB Mountain Rescue and all the Crested Butte side does a way better job supporting this race than anybody on our side.
Yeah.
So if you want to change that, if you want to help, and you live in the Roaring Fork Valley, write your name in the comments and we'll reach out to you. You won't even notice there's a hut when you go by. So it's hidden.
Moving through the course here, so the climb up Star Pass, I'm sure a lot of you have been looking at the checkpoints. The climb up Star Pass is only the beginning. This is a comment. The climb up Star Pass is only the beginning. Don't be fooled. The hard part has just begun.
And I know,
true words have not been spoken.
And I know Tyler asked the question: is how do you break up the course in your mind? And I guess the way I see it is don't start too fast up CB Mountain Resort. It's like the least consequential part of the whole race. It's over in minutes. And then you're in, the skate zone from Brush Creek. And that is a very fast, like you should be able to skate that if you want a chance for like a high finish. There's a bit of side stepping involved. And if you just go slow and steady, you can skate a long time. Really to Death Pass is totally skatable. So I don't know how far Death Pass is into the race. Maybe it's like 6 miles.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, 6 to 7 miles. So that's when you get to the Death Pass checkpoint, that's where I really think the first part of the race is done. Usually that can be pretty melted out. It gets a lot of sun, so it's a lot of skis on, skis off in most years. Maybe we'll get lucky. I've certainly seen skate tracks going way past Death Pass, but that's usually by the leaders. At that point, most everybody has skins on. And then it is a long time from Death Pass to the Friends Hut. But that's really what in your mind is going to mark, about half the elevation will be done by the time you get to Friends Hut and get up to Star Pass. So Friends Hut is where that little aid station is. I think that's probably, 13, 14 miles into the race.
It's a little bit hard. Well, Star Pass is the halfway point.
Right.
So Friends Hut might be a little bit farther than that.
Well, Friends Hut is on this side of Star Pass. So, I see what you're saying, but almost closer to 20.
It might be like 18-ish or something.
So Star Pass, as Mike said, if we're previewing the whole course, is the biggest climb. They do this at the pre-race meeting too. That is the biggest climb. It has some kick turns. Sometimes when it's really hard.
High elevation.
Super high elevation that always gets me. And sometimes you'll have to boot it, and it's very exposed. So if you have to do any layering, you want to do the layering before you get to the ridge of Star Pass, because you're on the ridge a long time. It's like quite a bit more skinning once you're on the ridge. And then you're descending on the ridge for a while before you drop fully over Star Pass. So you think that's the halfway point, but it's only the halfway point if you can keep the exact same pace you've been doing for the previous 4, 5, 6, 7 hours for the rest of it. If not, I think that's why someone wrote in and said that. Yeah. From there, Geo's Bonfire is a great place to kind of get your shit together. Yeah. And then it's a very slow climb through trees that just don't end for maybe another 3 or 4 miles. And then you're in the worst part of the race, which is Taylor Flats.
I've bonked every single year there.
So it's a grim spot that lasts for another 3 to 4 miles or eternity, depending on your mindset. And then you're to the top of Taylor Pass. And I forget how many knuckles there are between there and Barnard Hut. Maybe up Gold Hill and stuff. There might be 4 knuckles, if I can remember, where you pull skins or keep your skins on downhill, and there's steep ups. It takes a long time to get to Barnard. Mm-hmm. And some years I've nailed Barnard in, and I've did my nutrition and hydration. Everything felt good, and I can do it in a little over an hour. And sometimes I've totally messed up every transition, and it takes over 2 hours.
Taylor Flats through Barnard is one of the hardest beta intensive parts, because I don't know about you, I remember the least amount about that section, because typically that is where you've made the push to get to the halfway point, and it's kind of a low point in the race, like emotionally, physically, because once you get to Barnard, you have Richmond Ridge. Yeah, Richmond Ridge is a nightmare. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but you're just at a point where nothing is going on in your head at that point. You're just slogging. And for a good chunk of it, you're in the Alpine, so it's just open space. Yeah. You're kind of exposed. You're tired.
You'll see teams ahead of you and be like, "Oh, they're right there," but they're actually like a half hour ahead of you.
Yeah. Start at Richmond Ridge. I don't know what your thoughts are on it. Last year, I definitely had some low points in my race. My partner and I nailed Richmond Ridge, but that's not every year. No. You're never gonna get a perfect race. Richmond Ridge is a tough one. If you've practiced skating, it doesn't matter. It's still going to be rough skating.
Yeah. I would say, Don't quote me on any of this because I've always been a little delirious. For one, if you can get out and try Richmond Ridge ahead of time, it'll help. But from the Barnard Hut, where you get your ramen, you get your last dibs on water, there's like a pretty heinous skate through, a meadow or stream bed, and then a pretty heinous like sidestep or herringbone up a hill. If you can keep it on through that, you have quite a long downhill from right after that high point. And it goes for a while, and I would keep the skis on for that. And then there's quite a bit uphill that I think even like the best skaters will kind of put skins back on, or you can just walk it.
Right.
I would say
I like walking, actually.
Yeah. There's one steep big hill right there that you need to walk. After that, what I would recommend is if you're really gunning for it, you kind of got to commit to just skating the rest of it. Or if I've broken poles before, so you're not skating, or if you're feeling bonky, at that point it's probably better just to put those skinny skins on and just commit to skins on for the rest of the day. You can waste, again, a lot of time and effort changing skins
back and forth.
So, commit. Are we feeling good? Are we going to skate and herringbone our way? Or once you're past that big hill, it's kind of the decision time.
If you live in the region, if you live in Colorado, or even more specifically kind of this part of the state, a way to test it out, if you're familiar with the area, you could go up Express Creek, which actually, if you look at the course map, Express Creek is actually one of the bail points for emergencies, but you can go up Express Creek from Ashcroft, and then that'll eventually kind of hit Richmond Ridge, and then you can kind of test the course back into Aspen. And that's a cool way to do it without having to go up Aspen, go out Richmond Ridge to then come back to practice it. So again, Richmond Ridge is one of those spots, until you do it. If you have the opportunity to get here and try it, it's a good thing to kind of finish your race strong, because it's you're 30 something miles in and it's cooking you.
Yeah. Couple last gear questions. Write them in if you have it. Skin failure. Polito mentioned before. Bring the Volet straps. That's a good way to save it. And the other thing is, I see a lot of people DNF races because their skins fail. And there's a lot you can do to prevent total skin failure. One of the biggest things is going to be, getting inside. Oh, as I hit my mic. Getting inside your base layer all the way with the skins so they're up against your actual skin. With the glue, I'm lucky because I'll usually grow a beard by then, and I'll wipe the ice off with my beard around the back of my neck. You want to get it fully clear of snow, and then give it some time really next to your skin. The longer you can wait before you go back to the well, the better the chances that they dry out. Cleaning the base every time you put it in, like running your glove a couple times over to make sure all the ice crystals are off, that helps a lot too. But really, if the skins start going, that's a good time to be like, time out. That's like the one case where we're going to sit here for 5 or 10 minutes and we're going to get things warm and we're going to get things right again.
Yeah.
Part of the pre-race checklist would be getting some gold label skin glue. That's actually something I think I've been messing up lately. I've been using Pomoka skin glue because I have Pomoka skins, but the gold label black diamond glue is like the stickiest shit ever. It's like too sticky to ever want to use on your skis.
But great for race skins.
But great for race skins because you can just do it on the last 6 to 8 inches, and it makes a huge difference. Once those skins start failing, you got to just shut it down and take care of it. So keep it up against your skin. Always keep it next to your body whenever you're going downhill or when you're using another. And that would be another thing is what I'll usually do is a lot of these packs have crampon pockets or skin pockets that you can access. So I keep the emergency one back there, and then I keep one on my right and one on my left, and I'm always alternating. So when my right skins go away, the next pair I pick out is my left skins, so my right skins are kind of warming out and drying up. One of the things is, you could do 2 different color skins, like a Pomoka and a ski trap. So you have a pink and yellow, and you can kind of keep them apart. But alternating is really important because if you're going uphill and you're spending 2 hours generating heat, you're going to warm up a failed pair of skins. But once one fails, time to really think about what you've done.
Yeah.
So good question.
You can definitely rub them on your pant leg if they're like really iced up.
Yeah.
You can try to just get some of the crystals off by literally like rubbing it on your pant leg. The absolute emergency is going, and you have to be very careful you don't cut your skin, but is going against the edge on the side of a ski. And that actually, if it's frozen, the glue is not going to be very gluey, so you're not worried about it glopping on your edge. You're just trying to get the snow off of the skin, so then you can put it in your jacket, so then you can melt the remainder of that snow. So if your skins are frozen, try to get a good amount of the snow off before you try to get it in there. It'll take longer to melt otherwise.
If no one else has any questions, I think that covers it pretty well.
Yeah.
After you get to the top, they check your leashes. You're skiing down Aspen Mountain, right down Spar Gulch. We were just there 2 days ago. It's quite a scene, so prepare yourself for that. I believe, and Becky will correct me if I'm wrong, we'll be back at the Gondola Plaza, which is an awesome place to finish a race. I only go there if we're finishing a race there. Luckily, there's a lot of great races that finish at that Aspen Gondola Plaza. But yeah, it should be a great party.
Barbecue.
Yeah.
It's really cool. And Aspen is a surprisingly big city for a ski town. So there's a lot of especially if the weather's good, there's a lot of people hanging out.
Yeah.
So,
in April, we're all hoping for good weather. We're hoping for good, stable conditions.
Yeah.
We're looking at February 27th, and things are looking good.
Oh, we do have one last question.
Okay.
Sorry. Addressing blisters. Blister prevention. I mean, we tape your heels. Pre-tape your heels no matter what. Leuko tape, I did not mention before.
Yeah.
It's Leuko. Leuko tape is what I tape my heels with, and it works like a charm. I actually tape my toes as well.
And then if it happens in the race.
If it happens in the race, that's a tough one. I mean, moleskin is going to be your padding. But then you're kind of going into that first aid mode. Is it worth it to just kind of suffer through it? Just know if you're going to deal with it. If you're like on Richmond Ridge, I would say, probably just finish the race.
Yeah.
It's going to hurt. And just to be clear, this race hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Regardless of who you are.
Yeah. When you're out there and you're like, this hurts so much, just remember that's why you're in the video right now. That's why you signed up for this. So, I think Mike's right. If you're running into real bad problems right before star or after star, you should stop. That's why there's the moleskin in there.
Mm-hmm.
That's why there's alcohol wipes and everything. Get things clean, get things dry. That's why we carry a change of socks. It's a good time to change socks.
Yeah.
Take some time. If it happens around Barnard Hut, you're just in for like a really shitty 2 hours, but can deal with anything for 2 hours, right?
Yeah. One more last minute question. What happens if I get turned around at Star Pass? There is on the Grand Traverse website, I believe on the course map, there are the egress options there. Mm-hmm. And so they will, you're not going to be left out in the blue. If you get turned back, if you don't make any of the cutoffs, or if you have gear failure, there are contingency plans. If you get cut off at Star Pass, it's probably going to be back down, and you're going to probably just go out most of the route until you get to Death Pass, I think. Yeah. And you go on the other side of Crested Butte.
Butte.
Yeah, so the race starts, and you're actually going to the west of Crested Butte, and the egress, I believe, comes out on the east side of Crested Butte. I think that is Brush Creek, where Brush Creek drains out.
I've used it before, and
yeah,
and there'll be shuttles, so they can still get you to the finish, because a lot of times people will, your shuttle, your person, your domestique, drives you around and is waiting for you in Aspen. There's no service, so it's an awkward text at like 10 in the morning, but there is a shuttle that will get you reunited with your stuff. So they've thought of that.
If you go over Star Pass and you're cooked, you're injured, something like that, I think the only egress option is you basically have to make it to Express Creek.
Yeah, and that's really good advice. If you at Friend's Hut, which is right before Star Pass, if you don't think you're going to make it, that's kind of the last decision-making point, because between Taylor Pass and Star Pass, Simi Hamilton, who got second last year in the ski, I ran into him on the bike, I think, last year, and he was carrying his broken mountain bike over his shoulder, having to walk a long, long way out. So that's a bad place for mechanicals. There's not a lot of help coming. You got to be really tough and strong if something happens at that point. So try to make that decision before you get to that point in the race.
Yeah. And gear fails, and don't be embarrassed if your gear fails, or if it's not your day.
Yeah.
All these things happen. It's part of the race. It's why it's more of an adventure race than a skimo race.
Than a speed race. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Sweet.
Really cool race. 25 years going strong. Sells out every year. Definitely a bucket list, once in a lifetime experience. So even if you're lucky and you've gotten to do it 2 or 3 or 10 times, I look forward to it every year. Never been more excited about it than right now. We're looking at, I guess, the other last piece of beta, April 6th, I believe, is the full moon. So it's going to be not quite fully full, but we're going to have an awesome night.
Yeah.
And hit us up, info@cripplecreekbc.com if you have any gear questions. We'll get this edited and we'll post it to the YouTube channel here, and we'll send it out through CB Nordic. Thanks again, Crestview Nordic, for having us on, to Montaigne and Dynafit for sponsoring, and we'll see you there April 1st.
Doug Stenclik, Mike Polito.
Out. The last thing is, they always have a fake newspaper for this weekend. Don't be caught off guard. It's gotten me before.